I still remember the phone call. It was a Tuesday, late afternoon, the kind of day in Florida where the humidity hangs thick and heavy, even inside. My mother's voice, usually a calm, steady presence, was sharp, almost brittle. "We're traveling tomorrow," she announced, without preamble. My heart hitched. Traveling? My parents rarely left their sprawling ranch in Ocala. Before I could even ask, she dropped the bomb that would shatter my entire world. "Your beach house and car have been sold already." The words hung in the air, cold and unforgiving, like a winter chill in July. Sold? My beach house? The one I'd poured my life savings into, the one with the panoramic ocean views and the porch where I dreamed of spending my retirement. The classic Mustang I'd painstakingly restored, piece by agonizing piece, a labor of love for over a decade. How could they be sold? And more importantly, by whom? A sickening dread began to coil in my stomach, a premonition of something truly terrible. I gripped the phone tighter, my knuckles white. This wasn't just about property. This was about an invasion, a violation of everything I held sacred. That single sentence, uttered with such casual cruelty, didn't just sell my assets, it sold my trust, my peace of mind, and every last shred of faith I had in the people who were supposed to protect me. It was the moment the world shifted on its axis, the precise second my life as I knew it ceased to exist. I was 58 years old, a successful independent woman, and suddenly, I felt like a child, stripped bare and utterly helpless. The betrayal was a physical blow, leaving me gasping for air in my meticulously ordered living room. How could my own mother, and by extension, my father, do something so unspeakably vile? I knew my parents had always been controlling. They'd micromanaged my career choices, criticized my relationships, and even had opinions on my furniture. But this was beyond control. This was outright theft, a calculated act of malice designed to dismantle my independence. The shock slowly morphed into a searing rage, a heat that started in my gut and spread through every vein. Resentment, a slow-burning ember for years, suddenly roared into an inferno. My mind raced, trying to grasp the impossible, to find a loophole, a misunderstanding. But the finality in her voice, the almost gleeful tone she used to deliver the news, left no room for doubt. They had done this deliberately. My carefully constructed life, the one I had built brick by brick, far away from their suffocating influence, was now rubble. The beach house wasn't just a building. It was my sanctuary, my escape, the symbol of my hard-won freedom. The Mustang was my pride, my passion, a roaring testament to my individuality, and they had taken it all, without a word, without a warning, leaving me with nothing but questions and a gaping wound in my soul. What twisted logic could possibly justify such an act? What dark secret had led them to this unthinkable extreme? This wasn't just a story about a family dispute. It was a deep dive into the darkest corners of human manipulation, a chilling exploration of how far some parents will go to maintain power, even if it means destroying their own child. I was about to embark on a journey that would push me to my absolute limits, forcing me to confront not only my parents' shocking treachery, but also the uncomfortable truths about my own past. Every step of the way, I would uncover layers of deception, betrayal, and a web of secrets that stretched back decades, secrets that had shaped my entire life without my knowledge. What you are about to hear is the true story of how I lost everything, how I fought back against an adversary I never thought possible, and how, in the end, I discovered the shocking reason behind their actions. It's a story of heartbreak, obsession, and the relentless pursuit of justice against the people who should have loved me most. You'll witness the explosive confrontations, the agonizing revelations, and the ultimate reckoning that forever changed the meaning of family for me. This isn't just my story, it's a testament to resilience, a raw and unflinching look at what happens when the ties that bind become the chains that break you. And trust me, You won't believe how it all ends. The phone rang, a jarring sound that sliced through the quiet hum of my morning coffee. It was my mother, her name flashing on the screen like a warning beacon. A cold dread settled in my stomach, calls from her rarely heralded good news, especially not at 7 a.m. I took a deep breath, steeling myself, and answered. Her voice, usually a melodic lilt, was tight, almost breathless. "Darling," she began, a word she reserved for moments of extreme distress or manipulation. "We're traveling tomorrow. Your beach house and car have been sold already." My hand, gripping the mug, began to tremble. The world tilted. Sold? My beach house? The one I'd inherited from my grandmother. The sanctuary I'd poured years of my life and every spare penny into restoring. The classic Mustang, a gift from my late father, meticulously maintained, a piece of him I still held on to. My mind reeled, trying to process the absurdity of her words. This wasn't some casual announcement, it was a detonation. "Mom, what are you talking about?" I managed, my voice a thin, reedy sound I barely recognized. "Sold? How? By whom?" A nervous laugh escaped her, brittle as dry leaves. "Well, darling, by me, of course. It was for your own good. You needed a fresh start, a clean break from that place." Her words, meant to soothe, felt like acid. That place was my home, my livelihood, the very foundation of my carefully constructed life. For years I, same character from section 1, had meticulously built my independent life. Far from her chaotic influence, I had found peace in the rhythmic crash of the waves, the salty air, the solitude of my small coastal town. This house wasn't just bricks and mortar, it was the physical manifestation of my hard-won freedom. "My good?" I spat, the resentment, a familiar bitter taste, filling my mouth. "You sold my property without my knowledge or consent?" "That's not for my good, Mom. That's theft. That's a betrayal." The word hung in the air, thick with unspoken history. Betrayal wasn't new territory for us, but this felt like an entirely new frontier, a scorched earth policy applied to my very existence. My mother, ever the master of deflection, sighed dramatically. "Don't be so dramatic, same character from section 1. It's all arranged. Your flight leaves tomorrow morning. I've already packed your essential things. You'll be staying with us for a while." Stay with them? The thought sent a fresh wave of panic through me, living under their roof again. Under my mother's suffocating control and my stepfather's icy scrutiny, was a nightmare I had spent decades escaping. Their house, a monument to their suffocating expectations and judgmental gazes, was the last place on earth I wanted to be. "No," I said, my voice gaining strength, each syllable a defiant brick in a wall I was rapidly building. "Absolutely not. You have no right. You will reverse this immediately. I want my house back. I want my car back." Her tone hardened, a veneer of maternal concern cracking to reveal the steel beneath. "It's done. Same character from section 1. The papers are signed, the money transferred. You have no choice. Your life here is over. Consider it a clean slate." A clean slate, she called it. To me it felt like an erasure, my identity, my security, my sense of self, all wiped away with a stroke of her pen. My vision blurred, tears of rage and disbelief stinging my eyes. How could she do this? How could she so casually dismantle everything I had built, all under the guise of helping me? A cold, hard knot formed in my stomach. This wasn't just about the house or the car. This was about control, about her unwavering need to dictate my life, to keep me tethered to her, no matter the cost to me. The resentment that had simmered beneath the surface for years now boiled over, scalding hot. I thought of all the times she had undermined me, manipulated me, always with that saccharine smile and the claim of knowing what was best. This was the culmination, the ultimate act of usurpation. The silence on the line stretched, heavy with my shock and her unyielding resolve. "I'm hanging up now, same character from section 1, she said, her voice devoid of warmth. "Be ready. The car will pick you up at 6 a.m. The line went dead. leaving me in a chilling silence, the receiver still pressed to my ear. My hand dropped, the phone clattering to the floor. I stared out at the familiar ocean, its waves crashing with a comforting rhythm that now mocked my inner turmoil. My sanctuary, my home, was gone. The sense of violation was profound, a deep cut that went beyond material loss. It was a violation of trust, of autonomy, of every boundary I had painstakingly erected between us. A tremor ran through me, not of fear, but of a cold, calculated fury. My mother had just declared war. She had stolen my peace, my independence, my very sense of belonging. The initial shock began to recede, replaced by a singular, burning obsession. I, same character from Section 1, would not simply accept this. I would not be a pawn in her twisted game. She wanted a clean slate? Fine. But it would be my slate, and it would be written in fire. This wasn't just about getting my property back. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and making her understand the true cost of her actions. The clock was ticking. Tomorrow morning. I had less than 24 hours to formulate a plan, to understand the depths of her betrayal, and to begin my fight for justice. This was no longer just a family squabble. This was a war, and I intended to win. The line went dead, leaving an echoing silence that screamed louder than any shout. My mother, in her twisted logic, had severed not just a phone call, but a lifeline to my past, a connection to the only true home I had ever known. The mug, forgotten in my hand, slipped, shattering against the tiled floor, the ceramic shards mirroring the fragments of my composure. I stared at the mess, a single potent thought solidifying in the chaos. This was not just about property anymore. This was personal. This was a direct assault on my identity, on the very piece I had so painstakingly built. My mind raced, a whirlwind of disbelief, fury, and a chilling resolve. Tomorrow morning. Less than 24 hours. How could she have done this? The legalities alone were a minefield. She had no power of attorney, no claim to my inheritance. This wasn't some casual family misunderstanding. This was a calculated, malicious act, a blatant disregard for my rights and my life. The bitter taste of betrayal, already familiar, intensified, coating my tongue like ash. I felt the heat rising in my chest, a slow burn that promised to consume everything in its path. This wasn't just about getting my house back, or my father's car. It was about reclaiming my narrative, my autonomy, and making her pay for every single ounce of pain she had inflicted. I walked numbly to the window, gazing out at the familiar stretch of beach. The waves, usually a soothing rhythm, now seemed to mock me, their endless crash a reminder of the relentless tide of her interference. My sanctuary, my haven, was about to be ripped away. The thought sent a jolt of ice through my veins, quickly followed by a surge of white-hot rage. I wouldn't let her win. Not this time. My hands balled into fists, nails digging into my palms. This was a war, and I was done playing defense. The first step was to understand the enemy. My mother operated on a unique brand of self-serving delusion, but even she couldn't conjure legal documents out of thin air. Someone had helped her. Someone had facilitated this monumental theft. My thoughts immediately turned to Uncle Robert, her brother, a man whose moral compass had always spun wildly in the direction of profit. He was a real estate broker, always looking for a quick buck, and notoriously susceptible to my mother's manipulative charms. If anyone could orchestrate such a shady deal, it was him. A cold certainty settled in my gut. He was involved. I pulled out my phone, my fingers trembling slightly as I scrolled through my contacts. It had been years since I'd spoken to him, a deliberate estrangement to escape the toxic family orbit. But now, I needed information, and he was the most likely source. I dialed, the ringing tone a drumbeat in my ears. He answered on the third ring, his voice gruff, surprised. Well, if it isn't the prodigal niece, he drawled, a hint of unease in his tone. To what do I owe this unexpected pleasure? I cut straight to the chase, my voice surprisingly steady despite the tremor in my hands. Uncle Robert, my mother just called me. She told me she sold my house and my car. I know you're a broker. Were you involved? There was a beat of silence, heavy and telling. Then, a nervous cough. Now, let's not jump to conclusions. Your mother, she's a very persuasive woman. She presented some documents, said you were in agreement, looking for a fresh start. Documents? I scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping me. What documents? I signed nothing. I authorized nothing. This is illegal, Uncle Robert, and if you were involved, you're complicit. His voice hardened then, a defensive edge creeping in. Look, I just did what any good brother would do for his sister. She showed me a signed power of attorney, a bill of sale with your signature. Everything looked legitimate. My blood ran cold. A signed power of attorney? My signature? That was impossible. I had never granted her such authority. This wasn't just theft, this was forgery. A new layer of betrayal, deeper and more insidious, settled over me. She hadn't just sold my things, she had impersonated me, forged my identity to do it. The anger that had been simmering now boiled over, a furious inferno. You're lying, I stated, my voice low and dangerous. Or you're incredibly naive. Either way, you're involved, and you will regret it. He stammered, trying to backtrack, but I didn't let him. I'm coming over, Uncle Robert. I want to see those documents. And if they're not legitimate, if my signature has been forged, then you and Mom are both going to face the full force of the law. I hung up before he could respond, my heart pounding a furious rhythm against my ribs. The clock was ticking, and the game had just escalated. This wasn't just about reclaiming my property. It was about exposing a criminal act, a deliberate, calculated deception that went far beyond mere family squabbles. The path to justice was becoming clearer, even if it was paved with the shards of my trust. The conversation with the lawyer, Mr. Henderson, had been sobering. He laid out the grim reality with a detached professionalism that only amplified my growing dread. My mother had indeed orchestrated a complex, highly illegal transfer of assets, leveraging old forgotten power of attorney, documents I'd signed years ago, back when I trusted her implicitly. She'd used them to create a labyrinthine paper trail, making it appear as though I had willingly sold everything. The sheer audacity of her scheme, the meticulous planning involved, left me reeling. This wasn't a sudden, impulsive act. It was a calculated betrayal, years in the making. This is going to be an uphill battle, Mr. Henderson had cautioned, his voice grave. She's covered her tracks well. We're looking at significant legal fees, and frankly, a very public, very messy family feud. Are you prepared for that? I looked out the window of his high-rise office, the city sprawling beneath us like a vast, indifferent machine. Prepared? No. But I was beyond caring about messy. My home, my car, my sense of security, all ripped away by the one person who should have protected them. A cold, hard resolve settled in my chest. I'm prepared for anything, Mr. Henderson, I'd told him, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. Just tell me what we need to do. He nodded, a flicker of something akin to respect in his eyes. First, we need to gather every shred of evidence proving you were unaware of these transactions. Emails, texts, bank statements, anything that shows your financial life was separate and untouched by these sales. Then, we file a civil suit for fraud and seek an injunction to freeze the assets. This will be a lengthy process, She'll fight you every step of the way. The following weeks blurred into a relentless cycle of document gathering, phone calls, and anxious waiting. I spent hours sifting through old files, digging up receipts, cross-referencing dates. Each piece of paper felt like a tiny victory, a fragment of my life I was reclaiming. The house, my sanctuary, now felt like a ghost, an empty space where memories used to live, the thought of someone else living in it, walking through rooms I'd lovingly restored, was a fresh stab of pain every day. One evening, while poring over an old bank statement, a name jumped out at me, Oceanic Realty. It was the agency my mother had supposedly used to sell the house. A quick online search revealed their office was just a few towns over, a place I'd driven past countless times without a second thought. A wild idea began to form, a desperate long shot. What if I went there, not as you, the victim, but as a potential buyer, or even just an interested party? What if I could uncover something, anything, they might have overlooked? The next morning, dressed in clothes I hoped conveyed an air of casual wealth and disinterest, I walked into Oceanic Realty. The office was sleek and modern, all glass and polished chrome. A young, impeccably dressed agent, whose name tag read Chad, greeted me with a practiced smile. "Welcome to Oceanic Realty. How can I help you today?" he chirped, his eyes quickly assessing my outfit. "I'm interested in coastal properties," I began, trying to keep my voice even. "Specifically, something with a bit of history, perhaps a renovation project." "I heard you recently handled a sale for a property on Mariner's Lane?" "A charming place, I believe." I watched his face carefully, trying to gauge his reaction. Chad's smile didn't waver, but a subtle shift in his eyes told me I'd hit a nerve. "Ah yes, Mariner's Lane. A beautiful home. It sold very quickly, actually. A private sale, handled quite discreetly." He sounded a little too eager, a little too rehearsed. "Discreetly, you say?" I feigned curiosity, leaning forward slightly. "That's interesting. I was under the impression such properties often go through public listings. Was there a reason for the privacy?" Chad cleared his throat, his gaze darting to the closed door of an inner office. "Well, sometimes clients prefer to keep things low-key. For privacy, you understand." The previous owner, a lovely woman, was very keen on a swift, quiet transaction. "The previous owner," I repeated, my heart hammering. "You mean you? Or someone else?" I held my breath. His eyes widened fractionally. "Oh no, not you. The seller was actually her mother, acting on her behalf. Perfectly legal, of course, with the proper documentation." He tried to sound nonchalant, but a bead of sweat appeared on his forehead. "Her mother?" I pressed, maintaining my innocent facade. "That's unusual. Did you herself ever visit the office, perhaps to sign anything or just to confirm the sale?" Chad shifted uncomfortably, running a hand through his perfectly coiffed hair. "Not that I recall, no. All communications were handled directly with her mother. She had all the necessary paperwork, power of attorney, everything in order." He was talking too fast now, a telltale sign of unease. "I see," I said, a slow, cold realization dawning. "So, you never actually set foot in this office regarding the sale of her own home?" He hesitated, then forced a thin smile. "No, not for the sale itself. Her mother handled everything, that was it, the crack in the facade. My mother had gone to extraordinary lengths to ensure I had no direct contact, no opportunity to question anything. The path to justice wasn't just clearer, it was now illuminated by the harsh glare of their deception. I thanked Chad, promising to consider their other listings, and walked out, my mind racing. This wasn't just about reclaiming my property anymore. It was about exposing a web of lies, a deliberate, calculated act that went far beyond mere family squabbles. The game had just escalated, and I was ready to play. The drive back from the real estate office felt different. The familiar coastal road now a blurred tunnel leading to an inescapable confrontation. The salty air, once a comfort, tasted like grit. Chad's carefully couched words about the other listings and the unusual circumstances had confirmed my deepest fears. This wasn't just my mother's impulsiveness. This was a meticulously orchestrated maneuver, a betrayal that ran deeper than I could have imagined. My mind, usually a calm sea, was now a tempest, waves of anger crashing against the rocks of disbelief. I pulled into the driveway, the Mustang's engine a low growl against the sudden silence. The house, my sanctuary, now felt like a stage set for a final, bitter act. Every window seemed to stare back, reflecting the turmoil inside me. I stepped out, the gravel crunching under my feet, each step heavy with purpose. The front door, once a welcoming portal, now felt like the entrance to a lion's den. Inside, the silence was deafening. My mother wasn't in the living room, nor the kitchen. A faint clinking sound led me to the study, a room usually reserved for my grandmother's old books and my own quiet contemplation. There she was, sitting at the mahogany desk, sifting through a stack of papers. She looked up, her expression a fragile mask of concern that quickly faltered when she saw the unvarnished fury. "In my eyes. Darling, you're back," she chirped, her voice too bright, too false. "I was just organizing some things." She gestured vaguely at the papers, a stack of documents I instantly recognized as legal forms. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just about selling the house, it was about the legal machinations behind it. The cold, calculating steps she must have taken. "Organizing?" I echoed, my voice dangerously low, each word a hammer blow. "Or signing away my life, Mom?" Her face paled, the carefully constructed facade cracking. "I don't know what you mean, you. I'm just trying to help." "Help?" I scoffed, stepping closer, my shadow falling over her. "You call selling my home, my car, everything I've built, help? You call forging documents, because that's what Chad implied, help?" The word forging hung in the air, a poisonous accusation. Her hands, which had been fumbling with the papers, froze. "Chad? What did he say?" Her voice was barely a whisper now, laced with a fear I had never heard from her before. The power dynamic had shifted. She was no longer the manipulator, she was the cornered prey. "He said," I began, my voice rising, gaining momentum, "that the signatures on the deeds, on the sales agreements, were unusual. He implied they weren't mine, Mom. He implied fraud." "Is that what you call helping me, betraying me, stealing from me?" She flinched, pulling back from the desk as if struck. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape, a deflection. "You don't understand, you. It was for your own good. You were stuck. You needed a push." "A push?" I roared, the pent-up rage of years of her subtle manipulations and overt betrayals finally erupting. "You pushed me off a cliff. You stripped me of everything, Mom. My home, my independence, my very identity. All for your twisted idea of my good." I leaned over the desk, my hands splayed on the polished wood, mirroring her trapped posture. "Tell me, Mom, who put you up to this? Who benefits from my fresh start?" Her gaze flickered to a framed photograph on the desk, a picture of her and my stepfather, Richard, smiling broadly. A cold, hard knot formed in my stomach. Richard. It always came back to Richard. He was the architect of her grand schemes, the puppeteer pulling her strings. "Richard had nothing to do with this," she mumbled, but the denial was weak, her eyes still fixed on the photograph. "Don't lie to me, Mom!" I slammed my hand on the desk, the papers scattering. "This has Richard written all over it. Is he in debt again? Did he convince you to liquidate my assets to bail him out of another one of his schemes? Is that it? Did he promise you a cut? A share of my inheritance?" Her silence was damning. The fear in her eyes morphed into something else, a flicker of resentment, of being exposed. She had been caught in her own trap. The game had indeed escalated, and the pieces were now laid bare. This wasn't just about my property anymore. It was about the insidious grip Richard had on my mother, and the lengths she would go to protect him, even if it meant destroying her own child. The path to justice was now clear, and it led directly to them. The subpoena landed on their doorstep with the weight of a judge's gavel. It was a formal invitation to the reckoning, a document that stripped away their carefully constructed facade. I had leveraged every connection, every ounce of legal knowledge I'd accumulated, to ensure this moment arrived. The initial shock on my mother's face, relayed by a mutual acquaintance, was precisely the reaction I'd anticipated. She had always believed herself untouchable, a master manipulator operating above the law. Now, the law was coming for her, and for Richard. The preliminary hearing was a tense affair. My lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Sarah, laid out the case with surgical precision. She presented the deeds, the unauthorized sales, the financial transactions, each piece of evidence a nail in their coffin. My mother, you, sat beside Richard, her usual poised demeanor replaced by a brittle defensiveness. She tried to interrupt, to interject with tearful pleas of misunderstanding. But the judge, a man who had clearly seen it all, shut her down with a stern glare. Richard, for his part, looked like a cornered rat, his arrogance replaced by a pale, sickly fear. He kept glancing at me, a silent plea in his eyes, but I offered nothing, only a cold, unwavering gaze. The betrayal was too deep, the wounds too fresh. The court dates stretched into weeks, each session peeling back another layer of their deception. We uncovered more than just the sale of my house and car. Richard had been systematically draining my mother's assets, convincing her to invest in a series of increasingly dubious schemes. My mother, you, had been so blinded by his charm, so desperate for his approval, that she had willingly participated in her own financial ruin, dragging me down with her. The realization hit me with a fresh wave of disgust. She wasn't just a perpetrator, she was also a victim, albeit one who had victimized me in turn. This twisted dynamic made the entire ordeal even more agonizing. One afternoon, during a recess, my mother approached me in the hallway. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her shoulders slumped. "You," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Please, don't do this, we can fix this. We can talk." I looked at her, truly looked at her, and saw not the powerful, controlling woman who had dictated my life for so long, but a broken, desperate individual. The desire for revenge, which had fueled me for so long, suddenly felt hollow. This wasn't about her suffering anymore. It was about justice, about drawing a line in the sand and reclaiming my autonomy. "There's nothing to talk about, Mom," I said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. "You made your choices. Now you have to live with the consequences." Her face crumpled. Richard, sensing a shift in the atmosphere, tried to intervene, but Sarah stepped between us, a silent, formidable barrier. The confrontation was brief, but it cemented something within me. The rage, the resentment, it hadn't vanished, but it had transformed. It was no longer a burning fire, but a steady resolve. The turning point came when Richard, faced with overwhelming evidence and the threat of a lengthy prison sentence, tried to cut a deal. He offered to testify against my mother, claiming she was the mastermind, that he was merely her unwitting accomplice. My mother, you, gasped, her face a mask of horror. The ultimate betrayal. The man she had sacrificed everything for, including her relationship with me, was now throwing her under the bus. The look on her face was a chilling mirror of the pain she had inflicted upon me. I watched, a detached observer, as their world imploded. The judge, unmoved by Richard's desperate attempt at self-preservation, denied his plea bargain. The prosecution, bolstered by the sheer volume of evidence and my unwavering testimony, was ready to pursue the maximum penalties. My mother, you, sat there, utterly defeated. Her carefully constructed life, built on manipulation and deceit, had finally crumbled. The silence in the courtroom was deafening, punctuated only by the occasional sniffle from my mother. It was a silence that spoke volumes, a testament to the finality of their downfall. The climax had arrived, not with a bang, but with the quiet, devastating sound of truth. I watched my mother, you, crumble, the carefully constructed facade of her life shattering around her. The silence in the courtroom, once deafening, now seemed to hum with a strange, almost peaceful resonance. It wasn't the triumphant roar I might have once imagined, but a quiet, devastating sound of truth, finally laid bare. She was utterly defeated, her attempts at manipulation and deceit finally brought to light. This was it. The climax I had unknowingly been building towards since that jarring phone call, the moment of reckoning for everything she had stolen from me. The judge's voice, clear and unwavering, cut through the quiet, delivering the verdict that would forever alter the trajectory of our lives. My mother, you, was found guilty on all counts: fraud, grand larceny, and emotional distress. The restitution ordered was astronomical, designed to cover not just the market value of my home and car, but also the emotional toll, the lost income, the years of therapy I would undoubtedly need to untangle the knots she had tied in my life. It was a victory, undeniably, but a hollow one, tinged with a profound sadness for the family I had lost, for the mother I had once believed in. Leaving the courthouse, the crisp autumn air felt different, lighter somehow. The weight I had carried for so long, the resentment that had festered in my gut, seemed to dissipate with each step. I wasn't celebrating. There was no joy in watching my own mother face incarceration. Instead, a bittersweet sense of closure washed over me. This wasn't about revenge in the traditional sense. Not anymore. It was about justice, about reclaiming my narrative, about finally being seen and heard. The obsession that had consumed me, the relentless pursuit of answers and accountability, had finally reached its end. My first stop was a small, unassuming cafe, the kind with mismatched chairs and the comforting aroma of brewing coffee. I ordered a black coffee, just like I used to drink at my beach house, and sat by the window, watching the world go by. The thought of the beach house, the sanctuary I had poured my heart and soul into, still brought a pang of loss. It was gone, irrevocably, but so was the toxic influence that had shadowed my life for so long. I realized then that my freedom wasn't tied to a physical location, but to the liberation from her control. Over the next few months, the legal proceedings continued, but my involvement lessened. My lawyer handled the appeals, the asset seizures, the painful unraveling of my mother's elaborate schemes. I focused on rebuilding my life, not from scratch, but from a stronger, more resilient foundation. The compensation I received was substantial, enough to buy a new property, to invest in my future, to finally pursue the dreams I had put on hold. I didn't buy another beach house. That chapter was closed. Instead, I found a quiet cabin nestled in the mountains, a place of different kind of peace, surrounded by towering pines and the gentle murmur of a stream. I started painting again, a passion I had abandoned years ago, smothered by the constant drama and demands of my mother. The canvases filled with vibrant colors, abstract representations of the emotional landscape I had traversed. Each brushstroke was a release, a meditation, a way to process the trauma and embrace the healing. I also started volunteering at a local animal shelter, finding solace in the unconditional love of abandoned creatures. It was a stark contrast to the conditional, manipulative love I had always known. One afternoon, a letter arrived. It was from my mother, sent from prison. My hands trembled as I opened it, bracing myself for another attempt at manipulation, another plea for forgiveness. But her handwriting was shaky, the words halting, unlike her usual confident script. She expressed remorse, not just for the legal consequences, but for the pain she had inflicted. She spoke of loneliness, of regret, of finally seeing the true cost of her actions. It wasn't a full apology, not entirely, but it was a step, a flicker of genuine introspection I had never witnessed before. I didn't reply immediately. I held the letter, turning it over in my hands, contemplating the years of hurt, the betrayal that had defined so much of my adult life. The resentment, though dulled, still lingered. But something else was there too, a glimmer of understanding, a recognition of her own brokenness. The justice I had sought had been delivered, but true healing, I realized, came not from her punishment, but from my own acceptance. Ultimately, I chose not to visit her. The closure I needed wasn't to be found in a prison visiting room, but within myself. I had learned to trust my own judgment, to set boundaries, to protect my peace. The beach house and the Mustang were gone, physical manifestations of a past I could never fully reclaim. But I, had emerged from the wreckage, stronger, wiser, and finally, truly free. The cost had been immense, a journey through betrayal and obsession, but the lessons learned, the resilience forged, were priceless. My life was finally my own, a blank canvas waiting for the vibrant colors of a future I would paint on my own terms. The silence in the courtroom was deafening, a heavy blanket woven from anticipation, and the lingering scent of stale coffee. Every eye was on the judge as he cleared his throat, the sound echoing like a gavel blow. This was it. Years of resentment, months of meticulous planning, and countless sleepless nights had all led to this single pivotal moment. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the silence. I glanced at my mother, her face a mask of carefully constructed indifference. But I saw the tremor in her hands, betraying the cracks in her facade. My stepfather, a man I once called family, sat beside her, his usual bluster replaced by a pale, drawn anxiety. The judge began to speak, his voice calm, measured, dissecting the mountain of evidence we had painstakingly assembled. He detailed the fraudulent transfers, the fabricated documents, the outright theft of my inheritance, my home, my peace of mind. Each word was a fresh wound reopened, but this time, the pain was different. It was a cleansing fire, burning away the last vestiges of doubt and the gnawing bitterness that had consumed me. He spoke of their elaborate scheme, how they had systematically siphoned off my father's assets, leaving me with nothing but a mountain of debt and a shattered sense of trust. The betrayal still stung, a deep, festering wound, but the promise of justice, finally within reach, was a powerful balm. Then came the verdict. Guilty. The word hung in the air, a bell tolling the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. My mother gasped, a small choked sound, and my stepfather slumped in his seat, his face ashen. A wave of something akin to relief, but tinged with a profound sadness, washed over me. It wasn't the joyous celebration I might have imagined. There was no triumphant shout, no grand exultation. Instead, it was a quiet, internal shift. The weight I had carried for so long, the crushing burden of their deceit, finally began to lift. The sentencing came swiftly, restitution, significant fines, and then, the ultimate blow, prison time for both of them. My mother, who had once cradled me in her arms, was now facing a future behind bars, a consequence of her own greed and callous disregard. My stepfather, the man who had promised to protect our family, was stripped of his ill-gotten gains and his freedom. As they were led away, their faces a mixture of shock and dawning horror, I felt no satisfaction in their downfall, only a hollow ache. This wasn't the sweet revenge I had fantasized about. It was simply an ending. In the days that followed, the legal dust settled, and the process of reclaiming what was rightfully mine began. The beach house, the car, the financial stability they had stolen. It was all slowly, painstakingly returned. But the emotional landscape within me had irrevocably changed. The obsession with revenge, the relentless pursuit of justice, had defined me for so long. Now, with the objective achieved, I found myself adrift in a strange new quiet. The anger, once a roaring inferno, had dwindled to embers, leaving behind a lingering sense of emptiness. One afternoon, standing on the newly restored porch of my beach house, watching the waves crash against the shore, I finally understood. The real victory wasn't in their punishment, but in my own liberation. I was no longer defined by their betrayal, no longer a victim consumed by a thirst for vengeance. The journey had been brutal, stripping me bare, forcing me to confront the darkest corners of my own heart. I had learned resilience I never knew I possessed, a fierce determination to fight for what was right, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. The cost had been immense, the shattering of a family, the loss of innocence, the painful realization that those closest to you could inflict the deepest wounds. Yet, in the ashes of that destruction, something new had emerged. A quiet strength, a profound understanding of self-worth, and a renewed sense of purpose. I wasn't the same person who had received that devastating call from my mother. I was stronger, wiser, and finally, free. The ocean breeze carried away the last whispers of resentment, leaving behind a bittersweet peace. The chapter of revenge was closed, and the story of my own rebuilding had just begun.